very beginning of the club.
All right.
Frequently, but
And I can even see what we're showing tonight. So I'm going to give a really quick update. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, you guys are going to have to stop. We're starting.
Mute us?
No, yeah, I need to mute you guys. So we've got the peanut gallery here, and
we can use tape.
yeah. All right, we're gonna get started. I'm gonna
mask us.
oops.
I'll intersect with you later.
I'm gonna do a real quick update on what we're gonna do in 2025, and then we'll turn it over to Barney. But if y'all read the newsletter, we're gonna have 12 meetings this year, and 4 are gonna be presentations, and 4 are gonna be something we're calling application labs. And then we're gonna do a contest and 3 social events, and we'll get out a calendar later. But I really want to focus on these 2 presentation and application lab, those 4 sessions each. So what we're going to do, like tonight's going to be a presentation on a particular topic, and Barney will go through that. But then we're going to send you an email with a Dropbox link, and everybody's going to have an assignment if you choose to participate. Take some of that, what you learned in the presentation, and then upload us 3 photographs for the following month's application lab. And then we'll review those photos. I mean, we'll have about a 10 or 15 minute session. Oops. You know, reviewing what we learned from the presentation, and then we'll go and look at all the samples and have a kind of a peer review of the submission. So it's a little bit of a takeoff on what we used to do in the peer mentor group, but each presentation is going to have a topic, and then the following month we'll have the users submit what they learned. So that's what we're gonna be doing for the coming year. And tonight we're gonna cover masking in Lightroom, and we're gonna turn it over to Barney. But if you have a question real quick about the presentation application lab idea, this is your chance.
Okay.
All right.
So everybody should be able to see the title of today's presentation. I'm going to be running this out of Lightroom, and after going through a couple of quick slides, we'll kind of get into a demo mode, because I think that's where we really learn the most and see what these masking AIs can do now in Lightroom. So as the title says, this applies to if you don't use Lightroom and you just use Bridge, you're safe. If let me see if I can move this forward. Why can't I move this forward? There we go. Excuse me. So just so everybody's on the same page, we always seem to find some questions about this. And so I just easily stated that masking options in Bridge, Lightroom Classic, and Photoshop's Camera Raw filter are all the same. There are some very subtle differences between Bridge and Lightroom Classic, but that does not apply to what we're going to be talking about today at all. So we're all on the same page. And if you use any of these 3, then what you're going to see tonight, and hopefully what you're going to take away from tonight, will apply to, you'll be able to apply to your images. So, yeah.
Is everybody seeing Barney's screen?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm seeing some nods out there. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, please just we're just a real small group, so feel free to just, interrupt. So these are the options that we're going to go through, and there's one here that I have listed here that we're not going to touch, but I'll go through that. So the first is when you pull up the masking icon in the development mode, you'll see things like subject and sky and the brush and gradient mask. So what are these things? Well, the subject and sky, this is an AI-driven algorithm that auto-selects the subject or the sky, and we're going to demonstrate a couple of simple things to show how that works, and some more sophisticated things where it doesn't really work that well. You can also select with a brush. And again, this brush selection is much like what you see in Photoshop, and that is, a takeaway trick here is when you're using a brush to select an object, whether it's in Photoshop or in Lightroom, take your time with it, because the algorithm needs to keep up with identifying where that edge is. If you go real fast, then you might have to go back and do some correction. So take your time, go slow with a appropriate size brush, and you'll be fine. Gradient masks, of course, these are things that I think we all use all the time, radiant and linear. They're going to be very important as we move through the demos. I'll show you how you can use those with what's called intersection masks, which I think is the main takeaway for tonight. You can select based on color, which targets a specific range of hues to do your selection, and then you can fine tune that to narrow it down. And we're going to show you some demonstrations of how that works. This next one, the depth range mask. I'm not touching that. These are for us iPhone users that take portraits and use the depth capture feature. I have never used it, and of course, it's with my images. Therefore, since it wasn't captured that way, it doesn't show up as an option. And the last thing is the luminance range masks, and of course, luminance is based on brightness. So you can go ahead and select a particular bright or luminance range that you want, and you can narrow that range as well in creating your mask. So we're going to, as we step through these things, kind of build on them and use these masks in different orders in order to get to the final image. So let's move on. These are the sorts of things that you can do once you can mask. You can fine tune. So if you overshoot or undershoot, you can add or subtract. You obviously see the area that you're masking, and in my case, I chose the more of a violet or reddish type color. You can invert your mask selections very easy with a click. That's a very powerful tool, especially if you do a subject and you want to darken the background. Well, all you have to do is just hit one button called invert, and all of a sudden the mask is inverted and you're working on the background. And finally, as we talked about, you can use a brush to select very small areas that you might want to change. When you are masking, you are essentially building layers on top of one another, and you can turn those on and off. It's not nearly as sophisticated as what you can do in Photoshop. So don't think of this as layers in Photoshop. These are layers in masking, but I think that you'll find that you can get 85–90% of the work done in Lightroom now that in previous 5–10 years ago we were having to go over to Photoshop all the time. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about intersect masks, because some folks, a lot of us have trouble kind of understanding this, and this is perhaps the most powerful tool that we have in using all the different masking options we have. So in simple terms, if you generate a mask, and maybe that's your subject, that mask shows up, and then you go up and you say, okay, I want to intersect this mask with a linear gradient. Then you can do that by, and I'll show you where the command is for that to intersect, and you go down and you select linear gradient, and then as you drag that linear gradient across, then only the area that you had masked, so that only that subject, for example, will be impacted by this second mask, this intersecting mask. And so you can see if you want to add light to a portrait on one side of the face, you can do that very selectively. I'm going to show you a number of examples where we can use that. So it's pretty much, you know, my thought process around this is when I look at an image, I say, well, how do I want that? What do I want the final product to look like, and where do I want to emphasize the light, and where do I want to emphasize the shadows? And for landscapes, for me, as I emphasize the shadows, I'm adding more depth to the image. For portraits, I'm directing the light to the subject's main side or action. And intersecting masks allow me to do that. And you have to build them one on top of the other. So that's why you see in some professional presentations, for example, when it comes to masking and they're using Lightroom, and you'll see that they might have 30 or 40 masks. It's very easy to just keep generating masks one on top of the other to get to your final image.
Barney,
So
can I ask you a quick question about this? Can you exclude the intersecting part from your gradient? You're including it if you're adding light to the side of a face, but suppose I wanted a linear gradient to only affect the background and not a person in front of the background. Can you exclude?
Absolutely. And I'm actually going to show you, and I think in the second or third example of a F-35 jet fighter that I took, we're actually going to do that. We're going to affect work on the background as well as after working on the foreground. Okay, so we're going to now we're going to step through some examples of this, and we're going to start with the simple ones, and that's the subject and sky selections. This is a picture of a North Carolina vulture. Actually, it's some kind of I don't know my vultures, but we just call them turkey vultures where we are. And so this is what the image was kind of right out of the camera and the light. And what I want to use masking is to get to this type of a setting. So how did I do that? So the way I did that was I'm going to move into the development mode. And I'm going to close that screen because we don't need to do that. And now how do I get? I'm going to try to eliminate.
Just press F.
Press F. No, that's I'm trying to.
It's a Mac, isn't it?
I'm trying to move this out of the way down.
Oh, I thought you wanted to get rid of it.
Yeah. So, okay, so here's the masking icon up here. So we click on that. And in this case, since we just have a bird against the blue sky, we can just hit the subject and bam, there's your mask. Okay, this did a really, really nice job. And now I can come down and I have all of my standard things that I can do my adjustments with. And we want to just brighten that up just a little bit like that. Maybe adjust the whites, adjust the blacks, something along those lines. And you know, we're in pretty good shape. Now, if you notice right here, the mask didn't apply right there. So what I'm going to do is let's see, let me show this overlay. So I'm going to subtract from that. I'm going to take my brush, and I have a little tiny brush, and I'm just going to just gently paint that right in, and bam, now we're done. Okay. Now I could do some other things with this image as well. If I wanted to, I could go in and generate another mask, for example, and take my brush, make it larger. Now remember, on the brush here, you can set your feather as well as your flow and your density. I usually work with flows that are down around 50% because I like to build them up gradually. But in this case, I'm just for demonstration purposes, I could go ahead and select that particular area right there and then make that a little bit brighter, maybe add a little bit contrast and the like. So again, here's a very simple example, with an image against a uniform sky. Boy, the select or object, and I could do this with object as well, and it did a really good job. So hit return to go ahead and close out your masks. And now I'm going to move on to the next image. Now this is out at Lewis Lake. It's Lewis Lake above String Lake, right?
On the way to Yellowstone?
Yeah,
It's the one on the left.
yeah. So was out there. We do a camping trip out there, and so this is right up on the point. Mount Moran is right behind me, and the like. This is a morning.
Lee Lake.
Lee Lake, thank you. That's why I was thinking.
Lewis
Lee
is
Lake.
way up.
Yeah. So Lee Lake, it's at sunrise out at the point, and this is just taken with my iPhone because I was getting killed by mosquitoes at the point, and I want to make it add a little more drama to it, and a little more saturation to it, and just by using masks. Well, how do I do that? Well, in this case, this is the starting image. We can go ahead and we can select the sky. And unfortunately, there's something with this image that it doesn't show the mask on the sky. Anyway, it doesn't. But what we can do is the mask is there, and we can lower that exposure down. We can.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So it looks like the mask is there, but you were saying it wasn't there, so.
No. I can't.
It's not
The
showing.
There,
overlay.
and that for whatever, because I think I made a move on this. It's showing. Okay. All right. So
I was
you can see
gonna
that.
say you can always just click on show overlay if you want to see your mask.
And for whatever reason and you may run into this, but when I first pull up this image, even if when I select the mask and I do show overlay, it doesn't show, and I don't understand why.
But the mask is there.
But the mask is there. So anyway, you see that I'm gonna and the shortcut command for that is O, by the way. So I'm gonna turn that off, and you can see that I've dropped the exposure a little bit. You can play around with this however you want with the blacks and the like, and increase the I'm making it a little bit warmer, leave the saturation alone. So okay, so that's about where I wanted it. Okay, now, but the image is still out of balance, isn't it? Because the water now is brighter than the sky, and that's not how it should be, because the reflection should actually be darker. So how can we do that? Well, you can go ahead and paint things in. You can rough it in. Here's a takeaway tip, and that is to go to transform. Okay, and what I did I'm on an Apple, so I did Control, Transform, Flip Vertical. Okay, now we're upside down, right? Okay, what am I going to do with this?
So you gotta turn that.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. Exactly what I'm going to
Yeah,
do.
that's great.
And I'm going to create a new mask with that button up there, and I'm going to select sky, and look what happened. Wham! It selected the sky. It essentially left all the rocks and the foliage off to the side. And now what I can do is I'm going to turn that off, because now whenever I go up to the mask and I put the pointer on it, it shows the mask, which is how I like to operate. Now I can go through, and just with my eye, I can go ahead and then balance this off the way I want to, okay? So that's kind of a cool little trick. And I'm gonna close that out and now, of course, come back. Oops, Transform, flip vertical. And now we're back to where we were. Okay. So, kind of a cool little trick, something to keep up your sleeve when you're working with reflections. I mean, this works with some other things as well, but I really like the way it works with reflections in water. So this is an image of this is actually an African gourd that's about 24 inches tall and equally wide. I photograph things in the studio for artists for their portfolio, and so this is an image that I created for an artist a few years ago, and artists are interesting people because when they see an image that your photograph, they're kind of like, wow, this is just fantastic, and it's just like it's their art. It's that we're just kind of lighting it up the way you want to. But in some cases, you get somebody that says, well, I need to change this, and you really don't want to reshoot it. So in this case, what we want to try and do is, and I'm kind of making this up, is that you want to create something like this. So you want to change the background, make it darker, and then you want to emphasize certain parts of the gourd a little bit more. So if this is your starting image, well, how are you going to go ahead and do that? Well, you can do what we did before, and that is just select the subject. And so you can see now that I'm going to turn that off, and you can see that it did a pretty good job. But in this area right in here, it's generating a mask. Okay, and we don't want to change that area at all because that's part of the background. So what I can do is I can come into the subtract mode, come into the brush mode, and then make this brush a little bit smaller and kind of fill in that area. And there's some areas over here as well that need to. Now I'm you notice I'm not going super fast here. I'm trying to let the AI algorithm kind of find those edges for me and work them. There's another little one right down in there. I think there's one right up in here as well, if I remember right, something like that. And if I overshot, then I can just add it back in. Okay, so now we've selected that basically, and if there's some other areas actually over here that I think need to be dealt with. We can actually fix those a little bit later if we need to.
I also see that you're using the auto mask check
Yes.
mark on to protect the edges. So if you're trying to feather, you wouldn't want that on, but you're not trying to feather here.
Right. Thank you for bringing that up. This is a feature I find very, very useful for a lot of the work that I do in masking. So now we're in a place where we can go ahead and make any adjustments that we want to with this. And I've made a couple little, just kind of subtle little adjustments and the like. But now what I really want to do is I want to take this mask, since we have that in place, and I want to work on the background. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this mask and invert it. And so when I do that, now you can see that we're going to be working solely on the background. And this is where I can say, okay, where did I miss? So I missed right in here and I missed right in there. And I can go ahead and, let's see, I think I do this right. Add that in.
Huh. So it's interesting.
And there may be another spot or two that I've missed, but you're getting the idea of how this works. Now, the other thing that I want to do here is actually, this is all part of the board. So I don't want that to be impacted by what we're going to do to the background. So I'm just going to quickly clean that up. Now we're ready to go ahead and, if the artist were sitting next to me and say, so, well, how do you want to do this? You want to darken that down, you play around with these different settings in order to get to the point that they were looking for. And so, okay, so this is about where we wanted a darker background because this is going into the publication on Board magazine. Trust me, there is a magazine that specializes in boards. But anyway, and you can see now you can see where I've missed. I've missed the masking. And so I can go back to this mask and I can correct that, or I can correct it off of, in this mask and adding to it. I'm not going to bother doing that because I wanted to show you one other thing at this point in time. But you get the idea of how you can go ahead and correct this. And so what I want to do is I want to create a let's see. Let me just remember how I did this. I'm going to go back to this mask here, and what I'm going to do is intersect this with a linear gradient. And what I'm going to do here is pull this across, show the overlay. And this is where I was talking about. Remember, you have a base mask, and now you're going to put another mask over it. And the only areas that are going to be impacted are those that contain that mask. So you can see here, as I'm pulling this gradient across, I'm not impacting the background here. I'm just impacting the principal mask, which was that the mask of the gourd that we use.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Yeah.
Why did it say mask one?
I just went back and I'm just using that mask.
Okay, it should say mask two if you're trying to intersect two masks, shouldn't it?
No. You can change the name of these masks to whatever you want.
So was the other one mask zero? I mean, if there's two masks up there, how do you address the other one?
Well, the other mask is mask one inverted. Okay.
Okay.
And so
I got it. Okay, I just was looking for another mask here.
Yeah.
Step
Yeah.
one.
So in this case, I mean, actually what I should have done is I should have made a new mask, selected the subject, and then done the intersection. But for illustrative purposes, but you can see here, I'm just impacting that side of the where I put the gradient. And if I don't like where that is, if I want to move that along further, I can do that, or stretch it out further. And you can see how it is how I am impacting just, selected areas of that, where I've intersected the mask. So just that colored area is being impacted, not the background.
So is there a switch or something, or is it just because there's another mask that they're getting, that they're interacting?
The linear gradient mask, the mask that's on top, is just interacting with the area that's identified from the underlying mask.
If you wanted a new mask that was not related to any of those masks, how would you lay it on there?
So in that case, what I would do is I can create a new mask, and what do we want to select the front? Let's select the subject again, okay? And so now anything that we do with this mask, anything that we use a slider on the right-hand side will globally impact everything that is in this colored area. So over and above, okay? So if I want to now intersect that mask, and I'm going to intersect this and say with a radial gradient.
Okay, I get it. I didn't see the intersect
Okay.
switch before.
Then now only the center area is going to be impacted.
Awesome.
Okay, and you of course can change this however you want to.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's really cool.
so we're going to be using intersect masks a lot, so you can see in different ways, and it's pretty much, and that's why I say, look at your image first and take 30 seconds or so and say, what do I want to change in order to make this look really good, or the way I want it to look, which is really good, and then go ahead and start building your masks. Okay. Okay, so let's move on. This is a portrait. This is a granddaughter shot a few years ago, and in this case, what I want to do is get to something like this. Okay. Now you can immediately see I did a little bit of a prop. Okay, and it's just at the very end, it's just like I've got to just prop this a little bit in order to make it. But you can see that the idea was to bring in more light coming in from her right hand side. I had an overhead light coming down to emphasize a power movement here, and so there's actually a series of gradient masks that are put in place in order to kind of make all this happen, starting with this. And so the first thing that we do is we hit the mask tool. We can select the subject. Now, when we excuse me, let me back this out again. I hit the wrong one, because I want to I didn't want to hit the subject. I wanted to hit the people. Okay. Notice down here at the bottom, the AI program identified that there was a person here. And so now it's created a pretty darn good mask of that person. Now I click on that person, okay, and now I can see I have a whole host of various
Really good.
things I can go ahead and alter, okay? And so what's one of the most important things that in a portrait, it's got to start with the eyes. And so in this particular case, now that looks pretty weird, I gotta say. Okay, but we're gonna create a mask, and what we're gonna do with that mask is just very gently brighten her eyes a little bit. Okay, not too much, just a little bit. And typically, what I do here is I use the Z command and zoom in to see a little bit more, make sure I'm not making her too zombie-like. Okay, but maybe just something subtle like that. And now we're going to go ahead and create another mask. Again, a person mask. And this time I want to go ahead and do let's just do the facial and body skin together. You click those two, hit create mask. Now you're going to be working on just the face, so you can go ahead and brighten that up a little bit. Typically, especially with women, you don't want to add contrast. You can pull up the shadows a little bit. So these are the little subtle things that you can play around with to get it the way that you want. Okay, I think that's kind of like close enough for what we want to do. So the next thing that I want to do with this is I want to generate an intersecting mask. Well, let me do something first, and that is to select the background. Let's go in and select the background, and let's just drop that exposure down a little bit, okay? And that brings her, that adds a little more depth to it, doesn't it? So that's great. So now we're going to create now another mask, and I'm going to select the person, okay, which is now the entire person, and that's the entire person. Create the mask, and now what I want to do is I want to intersect that mask with a linear gradient. Okay, and I want this linear gradient to come in from this side. Now see, as I'm drawing that across, it's showing me the areas that are going to be impacted by increasing the exposure or the highlights or the whites. And in this case, I actually want to lower that down a little bit. I want to de-emphasize that because I want this area in here to be where the emphasis is. Okay, so you can see I can turn this mask on and off. The background is not impacted, just the person is, because we've chosen and masked the person, and then we intersected over that a linear gradient. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So, and in that case, to go back to this image, I did a little bit more. I did another with a brush, just kind of outline this area and brighten that up a little bit. So you get the idea of how to go from that to that, and so let's take this image right here. This was taken at Cherry Point Marine Station back last May. They have a big air show. If you've never gone to shoot an air show, you got to do it at least once in your life. It's with our digital cameras these days, it's just a lot of fun.
What lens is this?
This is a sore subject with me because I went with my 180 to 600, and you always check the rules as to what lenses you can bring into these air shows. And there was nothing posted even at 7 a.m. getting into this air show, any restriction on lenses. So I had the 180 to 600, and also a wide angle lens as well, a 24 to 120. we get there and the Marines say, sorry, you can't take this lens in. And I said, by the way, there's like 60 photographers behind me with long lenses and the like. He said, I'm sorry, but the orders came down this morning in the briefing from the commandant that no lens longer than the from your elbow to your wrist is allowed in. So I said, and you know, these guys are just following orders.
Yeah.
And they were as polite as they could be. They brought over like the head honcho, and he said, these, I'm sorry, this just came down. I said, well, you've got, you know, blah, 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 blah behind us. So they immediately sent their MPs out and made the announcement. So we all had to go back to our cars, drop our lenses off. This is to answer your question,
Yes.
Beth, finally, it's a 24 to 120. This is shot at 120,
Wow.
but is extremely cropped. Okay, there's a shot with a Z9. So anyway, so for this purpose, at least, what I wanted to get to is this image right here, okay? And you can do this all with just simple masking. And the way you do that is, so in this case, again, it's like the bird, right? We've got, let's just select the subject, and it does a pretty good job. We're missing a little bit of the condensation coming off the wing right here, but we can fix that by putting in add brush, make this brush a little bit smaller, and just gently paint that in. Okay, that's good enough. And you know, and by the way, when you're doing this, when you're masking things like this, it's best not to be super precise with it, because it will start to look a little bit artificial if you're not careful. But here we are. We've now got the jet mask. We can actually, what you want to do here in this case is kind of play around with the contrast and the highlights and bring up the shadows, and you know, play around with this to get it the way you want it. And I just wanted to get more detail up here showing. And so that's great. Okay, so we've got that mask. Now we want to work on the background. And so remember, what's the easiest way to do that? We can either create a new mask and select background, or just go to the existing mask and say duplicate and invert. And now we've got that. And now we can go ahead and drop that down a little bit. Now, that's looking pretty good. But what I wanted to do with this is I wanted to take it one more step, and that was I wanted and I think this is an F-35, but I'm not positive. I think this is a single inch. I wanted this area up here to be a little bit lighter. In order to do that, I went ahead and create a new mask and select the subject in this case, okay? And what I'm going to do is come over here. You see this little button right over here? It says invert. And I'm going to invert that. And so now I'm working on the background. I'm going to go ahead and intersect this with a linear gradient. Let me get this out of the way. And I'm just going to pull this gradient down. Something like that. I mean, you know, you play around with this and you get it the way you want to. And I'm just going to make that a little bit brighter. And let me open this back up again. That's before and that's after. And again, you can see intersecting mask. We're not touching the aircraft at all. It's all in the background. Pretty cool. So you know, we haven't done any outlines with the brush, but that's in this particular image, you can go ahead and do that, because in this case, you know, if you try and select the subject, well, this got most of it, but I also want to kind of get this as well in it, because what what I want to get at is what I wanted to do is just darken the back and keep the birds more in flight. And so the way, you know, a simple way of doing that, or one way of doing it is again selecting the subject, but now we need to add the brush to it. I'm going to feather this out and make this a little bit bigger. Ooh, that's way too big. The bracket key, by the way, the left bracket key makes the brush smaller, the right bracket key makes it bigger. And then just kind of paint this in, and maybe something like that. And then what I can do with this is then make a subtle adjustment like this, but mainly what I wanted to do is then duplicate and invert that, because I wanted things to match easily. And it's a lot easier to create one mask and then invert it and use it to your advantage. That way you're not going to miss as many areas. And so, you know, what is this? This is 2 minutes, and you know, I've got an image that I'm much more satisfied with now than I was before. So that's how you can use the brush to go ahead and add to your images. We've talked a lot about linear masks and radial gradient masks. Radial gradient masks, I think, are one of the more powerful tools that we have in masking. So, you know, play with that, use it. You know, understand that you can feather your images larger and smaller and the like. This is an image from the Pelosi area, and in this particular case, if I what I wanted to do with this is I didn't want to select a particular area. I just wanted to generate a linear gradient and make that darken that corner a little bit. And so just to kind of bring that up a little bit, and then create another mask with a linear gradient and bring that up from the bottom, and maybe just feather that off a little bit more and make that a little bit darker. So you can see that I can select various areas with these masks. I don't have to just use the subject or the object button. You can use any of these tools yourself in order to create the area that you want.
I have a question.
Yes.
When I was doing this on my computer, I had a hard time for it to take. Are you pressing the enter key between these actions, or does it automatically seem to save it for you?
I'm pressing the return key.
Okay, right.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. And so I'm still in kind of like mask mode now, and I press return key, and that takes me back into the kind of like the base level. What I did with just using a couple of linear gradients and the like, and some selected areas and like just darkened it down, because what I was hoping to draw your eye to is more of this upper portion. Use this as the basic frame, but that and these are actually the colors in the Pelosi. This was taken in June 2 years ago. It really is a fantastic place to visit. So we've got luminance and color range masks to deal with. And so here's an image that's kind of everybody should be familiar with. If not, shame on you. Where I wanted to get to with is this. Now, you'll notice I'm going to go back and forward. Now, the first thing that I did, because whenever you put an image of the Tetons of the valley, the judge will say, well, the horizon's not straight. And it's just like, well, the valley's not straight. You know, and that's the way it is. And so I just correct it. And so my apologies to this group because you guys know better. But I'm going to show you another trick. Okay.
Yes.
We want to do something with the sky. Okay. The sky's a little bit too bright in the light. So we're going to go and create the mask for the sky. But I want you to, if you can look closely with this, you can see that the gradient, a masking gradient kind of came down onto the mountains. And so I can go through and subtract and take that out and with brush, okay? That's a very tedious way of doing it. Here's a quick tip. Go to your mask, intersect. What am I going to intersect this with? You're going to intersect it with something that kind of blew me away, and that is you're going to intersect it with the sky. You intersect a sky mask with a sky mask, and what happens is all of that goes away.
Wow.
And I did some background work on this, try to understand why, and it turns out that without getting too technical, the subtraction algorithm that Lightroom uses actually somehow corrects for all of this. So the other way of doing this is to put your sky mask in and then do so let me get rid of that mask. So let me show you the other way of doing it. I think what I just showed you is the easier way of doing it. To go to subtract, but when you say subtract, select sky. And you get, but now what you have to do is you have to invert that. Okay, so it's 2 steps. And I find that intersecting a mask with itself does that correction nicely for you. If you have a horizon, if you have a tree line, Beth, I always think about your moonshot with the trees and silhouette and the like. And so if you were to select that sky, you would see some bleed into the trees of the mask because Lightroom just isn't that sophisticated. But if you intersect that mask with itself, that will clear up another 90% of that. And you can do it one more time and it will clear it up again. So it's just something to keep in mind. But so we intersect, so essentially we got to the same thing, but we did through different steps. But now we can go ahead and play with that sky and make it the way we want to without impacting the mountains. What I really wanted to show you with this example, though, is I wanted to create a mask, and I want to drop down into well, let's do color range first with this. And so when you hit the color range mask, now you get the eyedropper, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to select this nice yellow, and you can see now we're used to seeing this the areas that you're going to impact are the ones that are colored. But over here, you have a refine tool, okay? And it's color range refine. And so you can move this slider back and forth and impact more or less wherever that yellow is existing in this. And so in this case, that's fine. Let's just say we want to, I don't know, drop the, add contrast. I don't know. I really wouldn't want to change too much with this. I just mainly wanted to show you how you could, we could maybe drop the saturation just a tad. Okay, so now we've just selected that area in the image that has that color palette associated with it.
If you click the yellow by the color range, does that give you options to?
That just tells me the color that I'm impacting. Right.
Widen it or
Right.
narrow.
Right. And so, I mean, you can see, I mean, there's a subtle difference here, okay? And in some ways you could say we've made it worse, but
It's really great for controlling your gamut with printing.
Yes, you could with that, but
If you have warnings that you want to.
Yes, yeah. So the other thing I wanted to demonstrate here was the luminance range. And the luminance and so this is important for us landscape photographers, because a lot of times what we want to do is we want to add more, I do at least, I want to add more depth to my image. And that usually means then playing around with the shadows and the like. And so what we can do with that is again, come over and select a luminance value. Now I selected something that's fairly dark, and you can see the mountains aren't affected, the sky isn't affected, a lot of the plant life is not affected, but this is still going to be pretty harsh, excuse me, around the edges and the like. So come over to this side, and now we're in a luminance range right here. And what you can do is you can back that off of the darkest darks, because I don't necessarily want to impact those. And you can move these sliders around and just impact specific areas that you want to impact. And so in this case, you can see the purple areas and some of these other areas that I'm not impacting. And so I can come down here to the exposure and, again, lighten those areas or darken those areas, whatever you need to do, but you're just impacting these areas that are shown in this purple overlay. Okay, that's how you can use luminance masks. So, these sliders here are absolutely critical in fine tuning your mask in Lightroom. There are a lot of things that you can do in Lightroom as far as color goes that are outside the masking presentation that we're doing. But this is something that I think is worth spending some time on and playing around with your own images, and you'll be amazed how you can take an image which you said, it's okay, it's really nice, and now all of a sudden you're going to nail it the way you want it. So
promise.
So that's
forget about that stuff.
Range mask, and I can do the same. This is taken from an airplane a friend of mine had, and this is kind of right out of the camera. And what I can do with this, I'll just very quickly here do a luminance range mask and select this gray area, because what I want to do with this is I want to actually add some more contrast here in order to add some more depth.
So he's adding contrast by going down? I thought you added contrast by going up.
Luminance range, and I came back over here and I created
paying
another.
attention.
In this case,
I wasn't paying attention.
Okay.
Did somebody have a question?
David, is that you?
Was there a question there?
Is that way to increase contrast?
Yeah.
So you can see, you know, you can move this around and select the different areas that you want to impact and the like. Now, in this case, it's picking up upon, the sky. So I would go through and obviously, I think what I did when I did the corrections on this originally, I selected the sky and then worked on just the mountains in the foreground. But I just wanted to show you how playing around with this luminance range can impact what you are adjusting in your image.
So Barney, question.
Yeah.
You selected 2 luminous spots. Did you do that individually or
I did that. Those are 2 separate masks.
Okay.
In that case. Because this is where I wanted to get to. And this is all with just done some simple masking. Now, what I couldn't correct is this hazy area right in here around the Grand. And that is something that maybe somebody else can do that in Lightroom. I would have to take this into Photoshop and deal with it.
If you did a radial gradient on that area and then did dehaze, would it?
Well, we can actually do that easy enough. You can see these are the different masks that we use. So if we create a radial gradient and we'll put that right there. And you're saying add contrast or add dehaze?
Try the dehaze.
Or clarity.
Or,
Yeah.
one of those.
There's.
And that was.
Oh, that helps.
That helps. That
Yeah.
helps. See?
Wow.
There you go. Thank you, guys.
Wow.
Save me from getting into Photoshop. Yay! Now you can see here, there's a little bit right here. And instead of making this wider, let's see, we can stretch that out a little bit. So that's doing a pretty good job. I think what I would do is I kind of like that, have that adds a little bit of interest right there. If that bothered me, I could create another radial gradient and then or in this case, let me see if I can just do it this way. Duplicate mask 5, okay, but we're going to move this over here and make this whole thing smaller. So that worked. And the reason why I did that is the settings are exactly the same now. So there's uniformity and I don't have to worry about blending. You know, is my eyesight, good enough that the blending is not looking artificial and the like.
Barney, would you say that again? So you just literally copied that mask over and all the characteristics of the mask came over with it as well?
Yes. So what I did is the 3 dots and it says duplicate mask 5.
Okay.
Now, when it does that, it's adding another mask right on top of it. So you're getting another punch of that. And so, but what you can do is then grab that mask, drag it over to the side to another area, make it smaller, make it, and you're
just press the enter key or the return key and it stays?
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So that's really good because then all the values are the same where you started.
That's right. And that's why I did that. That's why I did it right there, because there's continuity here across. And I didn't have to, again, rely on my eyesight to envision to say, okay, is that blended in properly or not? I think that's going to get us pretty close to the end. This is a wolf shot. Again, I just wanted to emphasize background. and light direction. In this particular case, I used a brush to go very, very slowly around the animal in order to pick up all of those fine hairs. Again, go slow and let the computer keep up with your work in order to get to
How
that.
did you, oh, his eyes are not changed, you just,
Well, I actually, in this image, the very first thing that I did is brightened up the eyes just a tad.
so how did you brighten them up? So not a human, did you use a person and brighten them, or just went in with a brush?
Oh, no. So whoops, this is the image right here. So in this case, I just went ahead and took the brush,
Oh, okay.
blow him up, or her, and then did a selection like that. And actually, what I tend to do is I make it a little bit bigger than the eye itself, because otherwise it looks too
Stark?
too stark. So that's how I did that. Let me get rid of that.
Really nice picture.
It is.
Yeah, that's from our Yellowstone trip 2 years ago.
Was that wild or is that in the wild?
Oh, this is he's sitting up on the edge looking at all the people.
Yeah. Well, he looks so beautiful, he has no marks on him or anything.
Oh, yeah.
There's a building behind him.
So this is, and I won't go through how I did this, but basically all the tools that we talked about were used, and the idea was to get to this. Okay, so I darkened so the emphasis here to me was I wanted this radio dish. This is the large array, by the way, down in New Mexico. If you ever go down to the Bosque, you got to go to the large array on a day trip when you're sick and tired of shooting birds. And this particular arrangement was the dishes were close together. These things are 240 feet wide, by the way, and so they're not small. But the idea here was to emphasize this. So the background was darkened. The dishes, the subjects were selected. Gradients were used to darken this foreground. And then a radio gradient was, this area was selected as an object and then brightened up. And this took all of maybe 5 or 6 minutes in Lightroom without having to go into Photoshop.
Yeah, the original?
The original, that's the original.
Yeah.
This is an infrared shot, by the way. That's why
Okay.
that's why it is. And this is a finished infrared shot. Okay, does anybody have any other questions? These are other examples that I had. If you have cloud formations, again, using selected masks, you can emphasize the clouds and de-emphasize the foreground if that's what your goal is. This is a shot that David and I did off of the pedestrian bridge. Which, by the way, David, is one of my favorite spots to shoot night stuff. So, the whole idea here was to make some subtle adjustments to this image using masks.
How long in exposure?
This is about 60 minutes. And each exposure is, I think it was about 8 seconds.
Oh,
And
how
so,
do you polar align?
and then you don't have to do polar alignments with this. It's just, I knew where the North Star was, and unfortunately, I dropped I went a little bit too low. And so as I told Dave, I have to go back and do this again. But you just take a whole bunch of these images and then you can stack them together in Lightroom.
Yeah.
And then just under the light and blend mode, and everything kind of comes together.
I just assumed it was over 1 month exposure.
Yeah.
Very
So,
cool.
so I hope that if nothing else, you walk away and say, I got to learn how to use intersecting masks in my work, because it really will change what you can do and the like. So, any other questions? I'm going to stop sharing at this point and see everybody.
This is a great presentation.
thank
Barney.
you.
Thank you.
Good.
And everybody
Our
remember
ceiling
that,
is showing.
okay, was there a question?
No, I was just saying, thank you.
So everybody will shoot out an email this week that'll have a link to the YouTube of this, so you can watch it again if you need to.
Oh, good.
And then also it'll have a link to a Dropbox, so your homework assignment is, you can submit up to 3 photos using some of these masking tools, and we'll go over them in next month's meeting.
You want the original
It-
and the final product, or do you want the raw file with the accompanying, whatever the other accompanying file name is that links to it?
Why don't you send us the original and the final, and then we can talk about what you did.
Okay.
Unless somebody thinks it's better to go the other way.
So the original doesn't have to be in a raw file. You can
No,
just be a
no,
JPEG.
you can just send a JPEG, save a little space in the interweb.
Got it.
And I'll put some instructions about that in the email. So.
And if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me, or, call me and I'll, work it out with you. So.
Thank you
David,
so
Charlotte,
much.
looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks. We're excited at this end. So, the Yellowstone awaits us.